Hey there, friends. Welcome to my story. I have something really special just for you. If you're ready for a tale that will chill you to the bone and keep you on the edge of your seat, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to hear from you. And hey, make sure to click that link in the description below to learn more about the surprises I have waiting just for you. Now, let's dive into a world where roads lead to places you never thought possible. I decided one day to take a drive. I had finished my homework and it felt like a good time to explore. I drove down roads I knew but decided to take a shortcut I had never seen before. The trees were tall and the sun peeked through the leaves, making pretty patterns on the road. I felt excited as I drove, thinking about the adventure ahead. As I drove, the road turned into a small path covered with dust. I wondered where it would lead. I could feel my heart racing with curiosity, but something felt a little strange. The trees looked thicker and the shadows seemed to stretch longer. I brushed it aside, thinking it was just my imagination. After a while, I reached a place that looked like a dead end. There was a sign that said "Dead End" in faded letters. I frowned, feeling a bit disappointed. I looked around. It was quiet, too quiet. The only sound I could hear was the rustling leaves. I sighed and decided to turn around. I wished I had listened to that little voice in my head telling me to be careful. But as I made my turn, something weird happened. The road seemed to change. The trees moved closer together and the sky looked darker. I thought I must be imagining things. It's just a road, I told myself. But when I drove back, I found myself right back at the same dead end again. I blinked in confusion. What? How is this happening? I tried again, turning the car around once more, determined to break free from this strange place. But no matter what I did, I always ended up right back where I started. Panic washed over me. I felt trapped. I could see the same worn-out sign and hear the same silence that made my skin crawl. For a moment, I thought it was just a prank. Maybe someone was playing tricks on me. I started honking my horn, hoping someone would hear me. I waited, but no one came. The road was lonely, and I began to feel an unsettling chill around me. I turned the radio on, thinking maybe some music would help calm me. But all I could hear was static, like the universe was telling me to keep away. I looked out of the window, hoping to see something familiar, but all I saw were shadows. My heart raced and I gripped the steering wheel tightly. I took a deep breath and decided to drive forward again. Maybe I'd missed something. Maybe the path would change if I just believed it would. But the same old trick happened. The trees surrounded me and the road twisted back to that dreadful sign. My throat felt dry as fear gripped me tighter. Is this real? I asked myself. Where am I? Just then I saw a flicker in the corner of my eye. I turned to look, and there stood a shadowy figure at the edge of the trees. My heart stopped. It was just a glimpse, but I could tell it wasn't friendly. I wanted to drive away, but my car wouldn't move. It felt like it was stuck in place, trapped by something I couldn't see. The figure moved slowly, and as it did, I felt chills running down my spine. It seemed to know I was there. I watched, frozen in my seat. The figure looked taller than the trees, and its dark shape began to approach. I could see it had no face, just an empty space where eyes should be, and that empty space seemed to suck in the light around it. I thought about my family and friends. I wanted to call out for help, but my voice seemed lost in the air. I finally gathered the courage to honk the horn again, my hands shaking. The sound echoed through the empty forest, but it was swallowed by the silence. The figure got closer. My fear turned to terror as I realized that it was coming for me. I pressed down on the gas pedal, wishing I could break free from this nightmare. The car finally jumped forward and I took off down the road, but guess what? The road turned back again, leading right back to the dead end. Why is this happening? I screamed, frustration washing over me. The shadow followed, moving faster now, and I could feel its cold presence filling the car. Please let me go. I cried out, but nothing changed. I was stuck, going in circles while the shadow grew closer. I tried to think of a plan. Maybe if I keep driving faster I can escape, I thought. I pressed down on the gas, feeling the wind whip through the open window. But no matter how fast I went, the road always turned back to that cursed dead end. Time seemed to lose its meaning. I didn't know how long I had been trapped there. Even the trees outside began to look different. The leaves turned darker, and the shadows grew longer and thicker. I felt like I was driving in a weird dream that I couldn't wake up from. Suddenly I heard a whisper. It was soft, almost like a breeze. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Stay, stay, stay. The voice wrapped around me like a cold blanket. I shivered and looked around in fear. I knew I wasn't alone. I took a deep breath and decided I couldn't let the fear take over. I'll face this, I said quietly to myself. I will find a way out. I closed my eyes for a moment, hoping that when I opened them, I would be somewhere safe. When I opened my eyes again, the road had changed again. My heart jumped with hope. The trees had thinned out, and a glimmer of light appeared ahead. I pressed down on the gas, praying this was it. Maybe I could escape. The light grew brighter. I could see what looked like the end of the road. But as I got closer, my heart sank. Instead of freedom, I saw an old, crumbling house waiting for me. A gnawing sense of dread filled my stomach. Is this a trap? I thought. But there was nowhere else to go. I felt like I had no choice. I parked the car, the engine still humming softly. I took a deep breath and opened the door. As I stepped out, the chill in the air seemed to whisper, "Welcome." The house loomed in front of me, its windows dark like empty eyes. I approached, each step heavy with uncertainty. The door creaked open as if inviting me inside, but I hesitated. Something about the place felt wrong, like it was waiting for me to enter. I knocked on the door, half expecting an answer, but nothing came. It felt eerie, and for a moment I thought about turning back. But remember how I told you earlier how I felt trapped? I didn't want to be trapped in that loop anymore. Gathering my courage, I pushed the door wide open. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and everything felt frozen in time. Old pictures hung on the wall, their faces blurred and inviting me to look deeper. I could feel the silence wrapping around me like a heavy cloak. As I stepped further inside, I could hear the faint sound of whispering, almost like voices calling my name. "I'm coming," I said, hoping they would lead me to safety. The floor creaked beneath my feet, each sound echoing in the stillness. As I walked through the house, the whispers grew louder. Shadows danced along the walls, moving in ways that made me shiver. I felt their presence all around me, pushing me to go deeper into the darkness. I stumbled upon a room with a mirror that shone brightly, unlike everything else in the house. I looked into it, and for a moment I saw my reflection. But then the image shifted. In the mirror, I saw the shadow figure looming behind me. I spun around quickly, my heart pounding, but there was nothing there. I looked back at the mirror, my breath coming out in heavy gasps. "You can't have me," I shouted, but the image in the mirror just smiled back, a twisted smile that made my stomach turn. The whispers turned into laughter, filling the space with an unsettling sound. "Join us, stay," they sang. I backed away, terrified of what I had just seen. I needed to get out. I turned to leave, but all the doors seemed to vanish, replaced by walls. "No, let me out," I yelled, but the shadows seemed to close in around me. In a panic, I remembered the road outside. Maybe if I could get back to my car, I could escape the house and the loop of the dead end. I ran, but it felt like the house was shifting, blocking my path. I stumbled through rooms and hallways, hearing the laughter grow louder as I searched for a way out. Finally, I found a door that led outside. I burst through it, my heart racing with hope. I needed to reach my car before the shadows caught up to me. But outside, something unexpected awaited me. The road had disappeared. All I could see were trees and darkness, and I felt the weight of fear pressing down again. Please let me go," I cried, feeling small and lost. Just then, I caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows. The figure emerged again, closer than before. This time, I could see the emptiness where its face should be, and I realized it wasn't just a shadow, it was something darker, something that fed on fear. I turned back to the forest and ran, fueled by sheer terror. I didn't know where I was headed, but I knew I needed to escape. The laughter of the shadows followed me, deep and echoing in my ears. I pushed through the branches, my heart pounding louder than the laughter. Through it all, a small flicker of hope remained. I remembered how I felt earlier, that spark of courage when I decided to face the unknown. "I won't let you take me," I shouted into the darkness, feeling the shadows flicker back momentarily. My voice seemed to weaken their hold, if only just a little. Determined, I ran until my legs felt like jelly. Suddenly, I saw a glimmer of light in the distance. Is it the road? I wondered, rushing toward it. But as I got closer, I realized it was more light from the mirror inside the house. The whispers grew louder, more demanding. "Stay with us, stay forever." I shivered as I realized I was trapped between two worlds, the darkness inside the house and the restless shadows outside. With my heart pounding, I made a choice. I turned back, knowing I had to confront whatever the mirror had revealed. I ran back into the house, my feet pounding against the wooden floors. I needed to face my fear head-on. I found the mirror again, the shadows swirling around it like storm clouds. "You can't control me," I yelled, looking straight into the mirror. The laughter stopped abruptly, and the shadow's figure appeared again, looming over me. But this time I stood my ground. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted. The figure started to waver as if my words were pushing back the darkness. The whispers turned into grunts of annoyance. And just like that, the mirror began to crack. "Stay," it called, but the strength in my voice grew louder, drowning out the shadows. I could feel the energy changing like a storm gathering overhead. With one last shout, "I will not stay," I smashed my hands against the mirror. The glass exploded in bright light, and I was enveloped in warmth. I felt myself being pulled into a new place, where the darkness couldn't reach me. I landed on a grassy field, sunlight pouring down around me. I was free. But as I looked around, dread crept back in again. Surrounded by tall, thick trees, I realized I still didn't know where I was. The whispering had faded, but the unease lingered in the air. Am I truly free? I wondered, looking down the path in front of me, unsure of the next step. What would happen if I walked down that road? I stood there, heart racing, surrounded by those towering trees. They seemed to lean in closer, as if they were watching me, waiting for me to make the next move. The sound of branches snapping in the distance sent a jolt of fear through me. What should I do? Should I walk down that path or turn back to the house? I hesitated, looking in both directions. The field behind me felt safer, but who knew what awaited in this forest? With a shaky breath, I stepped forward. Each step felt heavy, like the ground was pulling me down. I could hear the leaves crunching under my feet, and every sound felt amplified. It was so quiet, too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. As I walked deeper into the forest, I noticed shadows darting between the trees. Were they just branches moving, or was something lurking just out of sight? I felt eyes on me, piercing through the dark. The wind picked up, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. Suddenly, I heard it again, the laughter from the shadows. It echoed all around me, rising and falling like a twisted melody. "Stay with us," it sang. The voice was filled with a sweet temptation, but I knew better than to listen. I quickened my pace, determined not to let them reach me. I was not going to be trapped again. But the shadows danced along the trees, leading me deeper and deeper into the heart of the forest. Just then, I stumbled across a clearing. In the center stood an old well, overgrown with weeds and vines. The bricks were worn and cracked, as if it had not been used in years. I felt drawn to it, but a chill ran down my spine. I could hear something splashing inside, like water swirling around. I approached cautiously, peering into the dark opening. The well seemed to stretch on forever, darkness flickering at its bottom. My heart raced as I stared down into the abyss. What was down there? Was it just water, or something worse waiting to rise? Suddenly, a rush of wind howled through the trees, making me take a step back. The laughter grew louder, echoing in my ears. "Look down, join us." Those invitations wrapped around me like icy fingers. I had to resist. I turned away from the well, taking deep breaths. I needed to focus, to move away from the wayward spirits. But as I did, I noticed something on the ground, a scrap of paper, weathered and torn. I picked it up, feeling my stomach turn as I read the words written in shaky handwriting. "Turn back while you can." My heart sank. What did this mean? I glanced around, feeling the shadows creeping closer again, as if they wanted me to be part of whatever had happened here. I crumpled the paper in my fist and took off running, the laughter still trailing behind me, swirling like a dark fog in the air. The trees seemed to grab at my clothes, branches reaching out like ghostly fingers. I could feel the cold air pressing in, suffocating me. I stumbled, trying to keep my footing, but every corner I turned led me into more darkness, more undoing. I felt so lost. Had I been running in circles? I looked back and saw shapes moving in the dark. They were too strong, too fast. I could feel their presence behind me, urging me to slow down. I was sure I was being hunted. Breaking through another line of trees, I found myself in another clearing, this one much smaller and surrounded by even darker shadows. In the center stood an old, dilapidated tree with twisted roots that looked like hands reaching out for me. I could hear the whispers more clearly now, swirling around me in an unsettling chorus. "Stay, stay." They beckoned from all around. I felt dizzy and scared. I started to back away, my mind racing with thoughts about my family and friends, wishing with all my heart to escape this nightmare. Suddenly, the wind picked up stronger than before. A gust blew through the clearing, and the leaves began to swirl violently, kicking up dirt and debris. I shielded my eyes, feeling disoriented as the world spun. When the wind finally calmed, I took a deep breath, but it was quickly snatched away as I felt something cold brush against my neck. I froze in place, my heart pounding in sheer terror. I looked around quickly, searching for the source, but there was only the oppressive darkness. In front of me, shadows began to shift, outlining figures that danced along the perimeter of the clearing. They no longer whispered, they laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound that filled the air. I could see their shapes, twisted and horrifying, formless beings with sharp edges and hollow eyes. They were circling me, drawing closer. I turned to run, but the moment I started, the ground beneath me seemed to open wide. My feet fell into a pit, and I stumbled, barely catching myself as I dangled over the edge. My stomach dropped, heart racing faster than ever before. I looked down into the darkness and saw nothing but an abyss ready to swallow me whole. I pulled myself back, clawing at the dirt until I managed to climb away from the edge. As I stood back on solid ground, I heard the laughter growing louder. It felt like they were almost deriding me, enjoying my fear. At that moment, a thought rushed into my mind. What if they were feeding on my fear? "You won't take me," I yelled, trying to muster every ounce of courage I could find. But the more I fought, the closer they drew. Their shapes began to blend, swirling around me, and I felt my strength fading. The ground trembled beneath me, and I squeezed my eyes shut, whispering a desperate plea to whoever might hear me. I couldn't stay here. I wouldn't allow them to win, to take me. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain as one of the shadows brushed against my arm. It was cold, seeping into my skin. I gasped and stumbled back, but the laughter only grew. Join us," they chanted, almost like a terrifying song. In sheer panic, I turned away from the chaos, running toward the only thing I could see, the darkness of the trees. As I plunged back into the forest, the laughter faded, but I knew I wasn't safe yet. The shadows were still there, just beyond my reach. The path ahead twisted and turned, and each step felt like facing an unseen enemy. A fog rolled in, wrapping around my legs and blurring my vision, making it hard to see where I was going. I felt dizzy and disoriented, like I was swimming in uncertainty. And again the whispers returned, softly calling out, "Stay, stay." I pressed on, half running, half stumbling. It was like a game of cat and mouse, but I didn't know if I was the cat or the prey. The shadow figures began to appear around me again, their forms flickering in the mist. I could feel their cold energy again wrapping around me like a chain. But this time I kept moving forward. I had to push through the fear. Suddenly, I caught sight of a dim light ahead, flickering as if it were trying to guide me. My heart fluttered with hope. Could it be a way out? I rushed forward, adrenaline surging through my body. I raced toward the light, desperate to reach it. As I drew closer, I could see it was a lantern hanging from a tree branch, swaying gently in the air. "Please let this be a sign," I whispered. But as I reached for it, the shadows sprang from the trees, grabbing at my arms and legs with icy fingers. "You thought you could escape?" they hissed, their voices dripping with malevolence. I felt their grip tightening, pulling me away from the light. I fought back against the shadows, feeling the warmth of the lantern almost within my reach. "No, I won't give up," I screamed, straining against their grip. The light seemed to flicker in reply, shining even brighter, as if encouraging me to keep fighting. With a final push, I broke free from their grip, stumbling into the light of the lantern. The shadows shrieked in rage, unable to reach me in that warmth. "Stay, stay," echoed in the darkness as they faded back into the trees, shadows slinking away. I clasped the lantern to my chest, breathless but not entirely safe. I had found light in the darkness, but I knew the whispers would return. There was still danger lurking, and I had to keep moving. Holding the lantern high, I turned back toward the dark path from where I had come. It now felt like a challenge, a test of my bravery, my will to escape this twisted realm. I stepped further into the unknown, determined not to let fear hold me back. As I walked, the lantern's light flickered and danced, casting shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. I felt eyes on me again. I was being watched, but this time I wouldn't let them see my fear. Further down the path, I noticed something strange in the distance. An old stone archway half hidden by twisted vines. My heart raced as I approached, the light of the lantern shining brightly on the entrance. It felt like something from a storybook, but the air around it was thick with unease. I could hear the whispers again, rising and falling, teasing and tormented. Through the gate, is this where they wanted me to go? I stood at the threshold, shrouded in uncertainty, heart pounding. What could be waiting for me on the other side? But the light from the lantern flickered encouragingly, reminding me that I had fought this hard to escape. I had to take the leap. Gathering strength, I stepped through the archway. What lay beyond was beyond comprehension. A vast landscape unfurled before me, starkly different from the dark woods I had just left. The air was colder, and a fog swirled around my feet, but the sky above was endless, painted in shades of blue and gray. I seemed to be in a world caught between twilight and nightmare, where shadows stretched long against the ground. Buildings loomed in the distance, old and crumbling, filled with memories and darkness. They stood like silent sentinels, watching my every move as I stepped forward into this new realm. The echoes of the laughter faded, replaced by a more haunting sound. The cries of lost souls mingled with the rustling leaves. As I walked further, the lantern flickered, casting its glow on an old stone path leading toward a giant door at the base of one of the buildings. A mix of dread and curiosity filled me. What was behind that door? Did I truly want to find out? But I had come this far. I reached for the handle, feeling the cold metal beneath my fingers. Breath hitching, I opened it slowly, expecting to be met with whatever horrors lay inside. Yet, nothing could prepare me for what I saw next. Inside was a vast chamber filled with mirrors, each reflecting different versions of myself. Some showing me young, others old, some happy and others terrified. Their expressions twisted and distorted, capturing every ounce of fear I had ever felt. The whispers grew louder as I stepped in deeper, the mirrors shimmering like ghosts. "Join us, join us," they beckoned, and I could almost feel their hands reaching out toward me from the glass, trying to pull me in. I felt the lantern grow dim, struggling against the weight of the shadows closing in. Panic gripped me again. I couldn't let them take me. I mustered all the strength I had left. "I am not yours," I screamed, trying to push back against the darkness. In that moment, the light surged back to life, reflecting with intensity. The mirrors flickered, the images distorting until a bright light burst forth, blinding the darkness around me. The shrieks of the shadows filled the air, battling against the warmth of the lantern. And just like that, the chamber began to crumble. Cracks spider-webbed across the walls as the shadows retreated, desperate to escape the light. I had to move quickly. I dashed back toward the door I came through, the chamber falling apart around me. As I stumbled out into the open air, the ground shook violently. The skies darkened above, swirling as if a storm was brewing. But I didn't stop running. The path behind me was disappearing into chaos, just as the whispers of the shadows faded into the distance. I sprinted, heart racing, my breath coming in heaving gasps as I fled deeper into this new world. But even as I ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. The fog rolled in thicker, blotting out the landscape. I paused, glancing back over my shoulder. The shadows were still there, lurking at the edge of the darkness, guarding their territory like sentinels of fear. What was their true purpose? My heart raced as I stared back at those lurking shadows. I felt as if they were waiting, patiently biding their time, eager for me to let my guard down. I took a step forward, the light of the lantern flickering, reminding me that I still had some power left to fight back. But the deeper I sank into this eerie landscape, the more I felt my strength wane. As I moved farther down the path, the mist thickened, curling around my ankles like a living thing trying to pull me down. Each step made it feel heavier, resisting my movement as if it were consuming my very essence. I tried to focus on the lantern, but the light seemed to dim as the shadows grew bolder, creeping closer, whispering in tones that chilled my bones. "Leave, leave," they taunted, their voices wrapping around me like a noose. I stumbled, nearly losing my footing as I tried to shake off the grip of terror. I remembered the stub of the paper I'd found earlier. Those warnings echoed in my mind, reminding me of their power. I couldn't ignore it. Panic set in, and I felt a suffocating sense of dread wash over me, pulling me down to the ground. I fought back fiercely, pushing myself to stand tall. "I won't be afraid of you," I shouted, my voice trembling but determined. But the shadows only laughed, mocking me. Suddenly, a chilling howl echoed through the trees, a sound so primal and haunting that it sent a wave of fear cascading down my spine. I turned around sharply, my eyes darting about, searching for the source of the sound. The fog shifted, revealing glimpses of shapes darting between the trees. They appeared more solid now, creeping closer, and I felt myself tighten in fear. I turned and ran. The path I had taken before faded away, and I had no idea where to go. I could hear the sounds of their footsteps behind me, fluttering like a heartbeat, relentless and pounding. Just when I thought I'd caught a break, the ground beneath me shifted again, showing cracks that glowed with an otherworldly light. It felt like a portal, beckoning me in, and I could see shadows swirling beneath the surface. I skidded to a stop, staring down at the flickering light. My instinct told me to avoid it, but fear pulled at me, drawing me closer. That voice was back, echoing in my mind, whispering urgencies I couldn't ignore. "Join us, it's your destiny." Shaking my head, I forced myself to break away from the pull of the darkness. I had to keep moving, but the shadows were not done with me yet. They surged forward, hungry, desperate to reclaim their prize. I bolted down the path, hoping to outrun them, feeling the heat of their pursuit against my back. Just as I thought I might escape, I stumbled into another clearing. This one was eerily silent, lit only by the pale light of the moon. In the center stood a stone altar, ancient and worn, cloaked in ivy and moss. It felt alive, pulsing with energy, sending chills through me. With shaky breaths, I approached it. The altar was covered in strange markings, symbols that twisted and turned, creating an intricate pattern of chaos. My fingers traced over the stones, feeling a warmth radiate from it, and as I did, shadows flared to life, writhing around me like a storm. "Offer yourself," they hissed, their voices like serrated whispers in my ear. "Join us." I pulled back, staring at the altar as panic surged through my veins. This place felt like a trap, another pitfall in a world of nightmares. I wanted to run but felt paralyzed, my body torn between fighting and giving in. The lantern flickered dangerously low, its power waning as darkness closed in. And then, a vision sprang into my mind. My family, my friends, their faces reflecting joy and love. I had fought too hard for them. Those memories ignited a flame inside me, pushing back against the overwhelming dread. "No, I won't," I shouted, voice firm, hearing a hint of strength in it. The shadows recoiled, sensing my defiance. I grabbed the lantern tight, feeling the warmth surge back into it, banishing the void that threatened to consume me. With newfound resolve, I turned away from the altar and dashed into the mist again. I could hear their anger boiling behind me, howls and shrieks growing louder as they realized I was escaping. "Come back." One voice, deeper and darker, called out, chilling me to my core. "You can't leave, you belong with us." I pressed on, heart racing, my breath labored. The shadows may have wanted to claim me, but I was not theirs. I would find a way to escape, even if it meant facing whatever this world had to throw at me. Ahead, I spotted a flickering light through the foliage, brighter and steadier than what I had seen before. I raced toward it, the promise of hope urging me forward. But as I neared the light, it suddenly extinguished, plunging me back into darkness. I skidded to a stop, panic flooding me. The shadows closed in, relentless and hungry, their icy fingers brushing against my skin, reminding me of their power. Then, out of the gloom, I heard a voice, not one of the shadows but something different. "This way," it called, warm and inviting. Without thinking, I followed the sound, shoving past thick branches and underbrush until I broke through to the clearing where the light had been. To my shock, I found a woman standing there, her features glowing softly in the night. She held a candle, the flame flickering defiantly against the growing shadows. "Quick! This way!" she urged, gesturing toward a narrow path leading deeper into the woods. I didn't hesitate. I ran to her, but the second I reached her side, the shadows seemed to boil in fury, swirling violently. They shrieked, hungry for my fear as they tried to claw their way closer. "Stay by me," she said, lifting the candle higher, illuminating the way ahead. "They can't touch you while I'm here." I felt a tentative hope blossom inside me as I followed her along the path. The shadows hissed, retreating from the warmth of her light. But I could feel their gaze, angry eyes fixed on us, waiting for their chance. The path twisted and turned, leading us deeper into the woods. I glanced back, seeing the darkness swirling and twisting, seeming to reach out toward me. "This way," the woman urged, pulling me faster. "We have to get away before they find us," she warned, her grip on the candle steady. I nodded, my heart pounding, adrenaline pulling me forward. Could hear the whispers growing distant now, but they were still taunting me. "Turn back. Stay with us." But as we moved further, the forest opened up into a small glade, twilight bathing the scene in soft hues. In the center, I saw an enormous stone, its surface aglow, casting a trembling light. "That's the heart of the forest," the woman said, her eyes shining. "Is it safe?" I asked, glancing around, feeling the shadows still lurking just outside the light. "For now. But we must hurry," she said urgently, stepping closer to the glowing stone. I followed hesitantly, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. The shadows might have receded for the moment, but I sensed they were just waiting for the right time to strike again. I could hear their hushed whispers creeping back, filling the air with promises of darkness. "The moment you lose faith, they will own you," the woman said, glancing back, her expression serious. "You must believe in the light. It is your only chance." Taking a deep breath, I stepped closer to the stone, feeling the warmth radiate from it. "What do I need to do?" I asked, my voice steadying. "Place your hand on the stone and call for the light. You must reject the shadows completely," she instructed, the gravity of her words pulling me in. I raised my hand slowly, my heart pounding louder than ever. Fear clutched at me, but I forced it back. This was my chance. I knew I had to be brave if I wanted to escape. With great determination, I placed my palm against the cool surface of the stone. The warmth surged through me instantly, and I closed my eyes, summoning every ounce of courage I could find. Light, help me. I reject the darkness. I called out, feeling the power radiate through the stone as it hummed beneath my hand. The shadows shrieked in fury, swirling violently around the clearing, trying to break through the protection of the light. But I refused to let them take me. I focused on the warmth inside me, fueling the bright energy with my determination. The stone glowed brighter, pushing back against the shadows with a radiant force. This is not your place. I shouted again, feeling the surge of power wash over me like a tidal wave. Suddenly, a wave of light surged up from the stone, spilling out into the clearing, scattering the shadows as their shrieks grew shrill. I felt the power rising within me, binding me to the stone, energizing my spirit as the darkness recoiled. But then, amidst the cacophony, I heard another voice, a low, sinister growl that sent chills down my spine. "You cannot escape," it hissed, and I turned, eyes widening. A massive figure emerged from the depths of the shadows, smothering the light in its wake. Its form was nearly human but twisted, layered in darkness and ill intent. It towered over me, eyes burning with anger. I tightened my grip on the stone, willing the light to push back against the approaching darkness. "You are nothing," I shouted, feeling my strength waver slightly beneath its gaze. The figure's laughter was cruel, deep, resonating through the air. "You are just a flicker in the dark, child. For every light, there is a darker shadow, and I am that shadow." I felt fear swell in my chest. It was trying to reach me, to pull me into the void, but I wouldn't let it. The light pulsed around me, invigorating my spirit. "No," I cried, channeling every ounce of strength into my voice. "You won't take me." The glow from the stone surged, expanding outward and forcing the figure back. The shadows shrieked as they were pushed away, retreating in fear from the overwhelming light. I could see their shapes twisting and contorting, desperately trying to escape as the power of the stone enveloped the clearing. The figure roared in anger, challenging the light. "You think this is over?" it bellowed, but its voice was drowned out as the warmth and energy intensified, overwhelming the darkness. "We will see each other again," the figure hissed, before vanishing into the shadows, a haunting promise lingering in the air. I felt my heart race faster, the adrenaline flooding through me as the darkness began to dissolve. The woman beside me smiled, relief washing over her features. "You did it. You fought back. But they're still out there," I gasped, struggling to catch my breath. "They could come back." She nodded gravely. "The shadows always linger. But you've shown great strength. They will fear you now." With the danger momentarily past, I looked around the clearing, the tranquility washing over me like a balm. "What now? How do I get home?" I asked, still feeling the weight of the unknown. She pointed toward a path that led away from the stone. "Follow this road. It will lead you back. The shadows may try to reach you again, but you must always remember the light within you." Taking one last glance back at the glowing stone, I nodded. I felt empowered, enlightened even. I was ready to return home, but the heaviness in my heart reminded me that I had to remain vigilant. I took a deep breath, stepping onto the path, lantern held high. I could feel the shift in the air, whispers at the edges of my mind. I was no longer just running blindly. I was stepping into the unknown, ready to embrace whatever might come next. With the glowing lantern by my side, every step felt lighter, the fear fading into the background. I could feel the warmth of the light surrounding me, even as shadows danced just beyond my vision. But as I walked away, I knew I wasn't finished. The whispers still echoed, reminding me of the darkness that lingered. In this strange world between light and shadow, I understood that the choices I made now would determine what path awaited me next. And as I ventured forth, I was ready to face whatever challenges awaited, committed to keeping the light alive no matter what. As I ventured forth, I was ready to face whatever challenges awaited, committed to keeping the light alive no matter what. The path twisted before me, branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, scratching at my skin as I brushed past. The further I walked, the thicker the air became, heavy with a musty scent, like damp earth after a storm. I could hear the rustling of leaves overhead, each sound putting me on edge. It was as if the forest itself was alive, watching, waiting for me to falter. As I pressed on, my lantern began to dim again, the glow flickering uncertainly. I tightened my grip, willing it to shine brighter. Shadows pooled around my feet, pooling like ink under my soles. Each step sent a ripple through the darkness, and I felt a cold breeze slip through, chilling me to the bone. Then came a low growl, deep and throaty, echoing through the trees. My heart raced, memories of the dark figure flooding my mind. "You're not alone," it seemed to say, its voice weaving through the whispers. I glanced back, expecting to see the shadows lurking behind, but there was only darkness. Just trees," I muttered, reassuring myself. But as I continued, that growl transformed into something worse, guttural laughter, mocking and cruel. I could almost feel its breath against my neck, like ice trailing down my spine. My eyes darted around, scanning the trees for movement, but nothing appeared. My heart pounded as I quickened my pace, trying to shake the unnerving feeling that I was being hunted. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the walls of the forest, bouncing around me like a sinister game. Suddenly, the path opened up to a clearing, and I stumbled into the moonlight, gasping for breath. The oppressive darkness seemed to bow away slightly here, but it was short-lived. Thick fog rolled in quickly, swirling like a living thing, creeping over the ground and curling around the trees. I glanced around, spotting a shapeless figure in the distance. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I squinted, trying to make out what it was. The fog began to swirl around the figure, lifting and falling like a veil, slowly revealing a face twisted in agony. It had hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness, boring into my soul, and a mouth that screamed silently, an echo of despair that twisted through the air. "What are you?" I whispered, horror curling my stomach into knots. The figure didn't respond, only drew closer, the fog wrapping tightly around it. I took a step back, hesitant, but I couldn't turn away. Its presence was magnetic, terrifyingly compelling. As it approached, I noticed its hands clawed at the air, grasping desperately as though searching for something that didn't exist. I could feel the sorrow radiating from it, a cold weight settling on my chest. "No, no," I breathed, backing away, but its hollow gaze locked onto mine and I was frozen in place. Shadows flickered on the edges of the clearing, closing in tighter, like a cage of darkness. I wanted to scream, to run, but the sight of the figure left me paralyzed with fear. Suddenly the shadows surged forward, and the figure reached out, its fingers brushing lightly against my arm. The touch was icy, sending a jolt of panic coursing through me. A flood of images poured into my mind, forgotten memories of joy turned to sorrow, hope drowned in despair. I gasped, stumbling back, finally breaking free from its hold. The lantern flared back to life, illuminating the clearing, and the figure shrieked, the sound piercing through the night. The shadows recoiled, pulling away from the brightness like roaches scuttling from the light. I stumbled forward, heart racing, breathless as I left the clearing behind. "Don't look back," I urged myself, pushing through the thickening fog. But the laughter followed, taunting me as I fought to escape. The forest closed in around me, the branches clawing at my clothes, ripping at my skin as I dashed forward. The path twisted again, leading me deeper into the oppressive weight of the darkness. I could feel the shadows gaining on me, whispering promises of despair. "We'll catch you," they seemed to chant. "You belong to us." Each word wrapped around me, threatening to ensnare me in their grasp. I stumbled into another clearing, this one even darker than the last. The moon barely broke through the canopy, and the shadows loomed larger, seething with hunger. "Run!" the voice of the woman from before echoed in my mind. I bolted forward, feeling the freezing breath of the darkness at my heels. I needed to find a way out, to escape this torment. Suddenly, I noticed a large, gnarled tree at the edge of the clearing. Its trunk was twisted, with deep grooves etched into the bark. I felt drawn to it, but fear gnawed at me. The shadows pulsed, closing in as if sensing my hesitation. With no time to think, I raced toward the tree. A flicker of hope surged through me. Maybe it could protect me, I thought as I reached out, pressing against the rough surface. I could hear the whispers growing louder, urging me to surrender. "You can't escape. It's futile." But as my palm rested against the wood, I felt a surge of energy coursing through me, a warmth that slightly pushed back against the encroaching shadows. The tree seemed alive, its roots reaching deep into the earth, as if it were a guardian, standing against the creeping darkness. I closed my eyes and concentrated, willing the strength of the tree to shield me. The shadows writhed, angry, pushing against the light. I could sense the struggle unfolding around me, the very air electrified with tension. As they crashed against the tree, I felt a rush of power emanating from within, forcing them back momentarily. But I knew it wouldn't last forever. "Stay close, stay strong," I whispered to myself, fending off the encroaching dread. Just then, a horrible guttural screech erupted from the shadows, echoing off the trees. It was the dark figure again, that terrifying presence returning, filled with rage and desperation. "Why do you resist?" it bellowed, stepping fully into the clearing, its twisted features illuminated briefly by the faint glow of the lantern. The ground trembled beneath me, threatening to swallow me whole as it approached. "You are part of this world now. You cannot escape." Panic surged within me, but the warmth of the tree steadied my resolve. "I am not yours," I shouted, feeling the energy from the tree fight back against the dark. "I will never be yours." Its laughter erupted around me, laughter that sounded like the wind whirling through the branches, cold and cruel. "You think you can fight fate? The shadows are everywhere. You will always be drawn to darkness." I pushed back against that idea. "No. I choose my own path." My voice shook, but I felt the truth in my heart. Bolstered by the tree's strength, I stepped forward, standing my ground as the darkness seemed to congeal around me, swirling and screeching in anger. "Foolish child," the figure hissed, a darkness pooling at its feet. "You will learn the truth soon." As it lunged toward me, I raised my lantern high, channeling everything I had into the light. "Begone. I refuse to be part of your nightmare," I shouted, feeling every ounce of my will pushing against the force of darkness. In that moment, the light shot forth like a blazing star, illuminating the entire clearing. It pushed back against the shadows, illuminating every corner, chasing the darkness to its lair. The figure screamed, writhing in anguish as the light engulfed it, its form twisting and dissipating into the air like smoke. The laughter fell silent, replaced by a deafening stillness that enveloped me. I stood, panting slightly, feeling the weight of the dark lift away. Yet in the quiet, I knew that it wouldn't be long before the shadows returned. I took a deep breath, grounding myself before glancing around the clearing. The tree, sturdy and strong, stood as my ally. It was my reminder that the light could indeed push back the darkness. I needed to keep moving to find a way back home. Glancing back down the path, a sense of foreboding crept in. The path ahead was shrouded in shadows again, the trees whispering secrets to one another, urging caution. I clutched my lantern tightly, feeling its warmth pulse in my grip, ready for whatever was next. As I stepped away from the gnarled tree, I knew I had to remain vigilant. The forest was alive with questions, and answers were lurking just out of reach. What else would I encounter on this twisted journey? What more secrets would this world reveal? With each step, the questions tangled in my mind like thorns, the shadows lurking just behind my thoughts. I took a deep breath and plunged deeper into the unknown, prepared for whatever horror might await me next. I took a deep breath and plunged deeper into the unknown, prepared for whatever horror might await me next. The path wound like a serpent through the trees, the air growing denser with every step I took. I could feel a prickly sensation crawling over my skin, as if unseen eyes were glued to my back, watching with a hunger that made my stomach twist. Whispered words floated through the air, indistinct but filled with malice. They wrapped around my mind, threatening to pull me off course. As I walked, my lantern flickered urgently, casting eerie shadows that danced along the ground. I kept moving, but the shadows seemed to take form, twisting and curling like smoke, reaching for me. The trees leaned inward, their branches extending like skeletal hands, trying to snatch me into the dark. I quickened my pace, my heart racing, each footfall echoing in the unnatural silence. Then I heard it, a soft, slithering sound like something being dragged across the forest floor. I froze, my breath catching in my throat, listening intently. The whispers faded, and I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. Something long and thin was snaking between the trees, just out of sight. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice shaking, sounding so small against the vastness of the forest. No response came back, only the rustling of leaves and the chilling silence that followed. I peered into the darkness where the movement had been, my pulse pounding in my ears. Before I could convince myself to turn and run, a dreadful shriek pierced the night, a sound that seemed to pull at the very fabric of reality. My whole body shuddered at the noise, a guttural cry filled with pain and fury. My instincts screamed for me to flee, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from the shadows. In the distance, a shape began to emerge, slithering closer with a speed that defied understanding. It was slender and glistening, each segment of its body glimmering with a sickly sheen as if coated in something vile. I could finally make out the outline, a grotesque serpent-like creature, its elongated body twisting and writhing. Its mouth was filled with needle-like teeth, and unblinking eyes bore into me, gleaming with a predatory hunger. I stumbled backward, fear flooding my veins, and my lantern flickered again, casting jagged shadows that danced wickedly. The creature let out another screech, launching itself forward as it closed the distance. I turned and ran, my heart pounding and my breath coming in panicked gasps. Branches snagged at my clothes as I pushed through the underbrush, the forest alive with the sounds of my terror. The serpent's laughter thrummed in the air behind me, taunting and victorious. I could feel its chilling presence creeping closer, the shadows lengthening around me, as if the very ground was trying to pull me down into the depths. Then suddenly, I dashed into another clearing. Everything was eerily quiet now, an unsettling calm after the storm of terror I had just experienced. I slowed my pace, glancing around, my breath ragged. But instead of relief, unease settled heavily over me. The ground was covered in a layer of pale mist that coiled and twisted through the moonlight. In the center of the clearing stood a strange, ancient altar, the stones worn and cracked with time. Before I could process it, I noticed dark stains on the ground around it, dried and crusted as if something horrible had happened here long ago. I felt a pull, curiosity mingling with dread as I stepped closer. The moment I neared the altar, shadows began to swirl violently again, rising like mist around me. I felt the cold breath of the forest on my neck, wrapping tighter, whispering secrets that I didn't want to hear. "Join us," they hissed softly, scraping across my mind like fingernails against glass. "No, I won't," I shouted back, the sudden strength surprising even me. The shadows recoiled momentarily, and the wind howled through the trees, pushing back against the dark. That's when I noticed something clawing at the edges of my vision. There were figures among the trees, pale and ghostly, their eyes sunken and hollow. I could hear them wailing, ghostly cries that blended with the rustling of the leaves, haunting and sorrowful. They drifted closer, circling the altar, their shapes barely illuminated by my lantern's flicker. "What do you want?" I yelled, my voice echoing in the stillness. Their mouths moved in silent screams, fingers stretching toward me, begging for escape, pleading for release. I felt a chill seep into my bones, an icy weight pressing down on my soul. The sight was maddening, and I fought the urge to run. With a rush of resolve, I stepped forward again, determined to confront whatever cursed this place. "You are not real," I shouted, feeling the strength from the tree surge again. At that moment, the shadows thickened, and with it came a roiling darkness that shot from behind the altar. A massive shape unfolded, unfurling in the moonlight. It was a great winged beast, its scales reflecting the light in a glimmering green, a grotesque parody of a dragon, with eyes that burned like coals, flickering as they locked onto me. "Foolish child, why do you resist?" It boomed, the sound shaking the ground beneath my feet. The ghostly figures drew closer, their cries mingling with the creature's guttural voice. "This is your fate. Accept it." Panic surged through me as I turned and ran, frantically navigating the fog that threatened to choke me. My heart thundered like a drum as I heard the heavy beat of wings behind me, the shadows clawing at my heels. Every time I looked back, those hollow eyes fixed on me, reflecting pure malice and hunger. I burst through the trees, my surroundings finally becoming familiar again. I could see the distant flicker of the initial light I had encountered. The heart of the forest, I remembered, a glimmer of hope pushing through the fear. But the ground beneath me trembled. The beast's roar echoed close, rumbling through the earth as I pushed myself harder, desperate to reach the heart of the forest. "I will not be taken," I screamed, each word a declaration against the swirling darkness. The creature lunged, and I felt a rush of wind as it narrowly missed me. I sprinted toward the clearing, knowing that just out of sight waited the stone, my only chance against the darkness. The glow grew closer, beckoning me. I burst into the clearing, the light blinding, the shadows retreating instinctively. I ran to the radiating stone, and for a moment I felt safe. But the moment was brief. The beast's presence loomed at the edge, hissing and screeching as if driven mad by the light. "Invoke the light. Defy it," a voice whispered in my mind, the sound barely audible over the din. I clasped the stone, feeling its energy surge. I wouldn't back down, not now. "Leave me be," I shouted, feeling the warmth flooding my being. "You have no power here." The shadows writhed, and I focused on the warmth within. "Light, guide me. Protect me," I cried. As I finished, the stone blazed with a brilliant light, pushing back against the darkness that swept closer. The creature writhed, its eyes blazing with fury as it fought against the growing brilliance. I held my breath, feeling the power lifting me, infusing me with courage I had never known. The shadows screamed, shrieking in utter despair as I unleashed the light. "Be gone," I cried. A surge of energy burst forth, a wave that crashed toward the darkness, sending it reeling back, shrieking and howling like a wounded animal. Waiting in the dark? I was ready to face them all. The forest around me began to shift, as though responding to my resolve. The trees creaked and groaned, their branches whispering secrets of what lay ahead. Each step I took felt heavier, as if the ground itself was trying to drag me down into the darkness. I could still feel the cold grip of fear in my chest, a reminder of the creature lurking just outside the edge of my vision, waiting for me to falter. As I moved deeper into the forest, the path became obscured by thick underbrush. The air felt thick and heavy, almost suffocating. Shadows danced like wraiths around me, flickering at the corners of my sight. I held my lantern tight, the flickering flame my only companion against the oppressive darkness. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the trees. The sound was low and guttural, like a beast awakening from a long slumber. My heart raced again, an instinctual fear tearing through me. I kept pushing forward, the urge to run battling with the need to confront whatever awaited me. The growling grew louder, weaving itself into the very air that seemed to thrum with energy. I stumbled into a small clearing, the moonlight barely breaking through the canopy. In the center stood a massive, twisted thing. It was a gnarled tree, its trunk wide and warped, like a monstrous guardian. I was drawn closer, unable to shake the feeling that something terrible had happened here. The ground around the tree was littered with bones, small, animal-like, but there were larger ones too. I felt bile rise in my throat as I recognized the remnants of something that had once been alive. A chill swept through me as I realized this was a place of sacrifice, a spot drenched in fear and despair. Without warning, the tree creaked loudly, branches twisting and swaying as if they had a will of their own. I stumbled back, but something dark pulsed from within it, reaching out in tendrils that twisted through the air like fingers. "Join us," it hissed, the voice slithering into my mind, wrapping around my thoughts. "You can't escape what you are. Get away from me," I shouted, shaking my head as if I could dislodge the words. My lantern flickered wildly, casting eerie shapes on the ground. The shadows leapt forward, diving toward me in a tide of darkness. I held the stone tightly, feeling its energy surge with my fear. "No," I cried, channeling that energy into the light. The brilliance exploded from the stone, a golden beacon that pushed back the shadows like a tidal wave, forcing the tendrils to retreat with a terrible scream. But the sound only intensified, morphing into the wails of countless voices, echoing all around me. "You cannot banish us," they cried in unison, voices layered with torment, intermingled with desperation. The shadows swirled around, crashing against the edges of my light, their anguish palpable and oppressive. With every breath, I felt weaker, the weight of their sorrow pressing down on my soul. "I am not afraid of you," I shouted, trying to drown out their cries. Yet doubt crept in, gnawing at the edges of my courage. That's when I caught the faintest glimmer in the distance, a soft glow peeking through the trees. My heart surged with hope as I instinctively turned toward it, propelled by the desire to escape the suffocating darkness. I dashed forward, pushing through the dense underbrush, determination fueling my steps. But the shadows were not done with me yet. They tightened around my feet, dragging against my skin like icy fingers. "You belong here," they hissed, their voices echoing my deepest fears. "Leave me alone," I screamed, shaking off their grip. The light of the stone blazed brighter, illuminating the dark shapes attempting to encircle me. Suddenly, something lunged from the shadows, a creature with matted fur and glowing eyes. It was huge, towering above me, its presence unmistakably menacing. I froze, heart racing as it let out a low growl, hacking and rasping like it had something stuck in its throat. The air around it was thick with a rancid smell, like decay and something much worse. I turned to run, but the thing was too fast, bounding towards me with predatory grace. My instincts kicked in, and I sprinted away, the shadowy whispers clawing at my back. The creature pursued, its breath hot and foul at my heels. I pushed myself harder, every muscle screaming with effort. The glow ahead became clearer, a beckoning light that promised safety. I weaved through the trees, adrenaline flooding my system like fire. But the darkness clawed back, pulling and tugging, trying to drag me into its depths. With every step, I felt the weight of despair creeping closer, the wails of the lost souls gaining volume as they reached out for me. "Run. Don't stop," I yelled at myself, feeling the energy surge within me once more. I could not let their fear take me. Just when I thought I might escape, roots sprang from the ground like serpents, wrapping around my ankles and pulling me down with a violent force. I stumbled, falling forward, my hands scraping against the coarse earth. Panic flooded my mind as I kicked and thrashed against the roots, but they tightened their grip, dragging me back into the suffocating darkness. I shrieked in terror, reaching for the light of my stone, willing it to break through the despair that surrounded me. "Let go!" I screamed, forcing every ounce of energy into the stone. "You have no power over me." For a moment, nothing happened. The roots constricted tighter, and my heart pounded as shadows danced wickedly around me. But then the stone blazed once more, a burst of radiant energy that exploded outward, illuminating the darkness with searing brightness. The roots writhed in agony, recoiling as the light crushed the shadows surrounding me. I pulled myself up, desperate, and clawed forward, breaking free from their grasp. But the creature was back, lunging just as the roots released me. I stumbled into the glowing light ahead, finding myself in a small glade illuminated by my lantern and the stone. Panic faded, replaced by a sense of urgency. The clearing was dotted with strange, twisting flowers that glowed softly, casting an otherworldly light. The atmosphere changed, something powerful lurked beneath the surface. But the creature stayed close, snarling, eyes gleaming with fury. It was barely contained by the glow, as if it were a physical manifestation of the darkness itself. I knew this was not over. The shadows were still waiting, hungry for me to falter again. Gritting my teeth, I stood tall and drew strength from the soft glow of the flowers. "You can't have me," I shouted, my voice echoing through the glade. This felt like a moment of truth, a battle for my soul that I had to win. As I squared my shoulders, the shadows seemed to swell, swirling around me like a storm. The darkness hungered and whispered more furiously, promising everything I had lost, everything I had been too scared to face. I could not let them win. Taking a deep breath, I reached up, holding the stone high, letting its warm light flow around me like a protective shield. The creature howled, its form shifting in agony, flinching away from the brightness. "You will regret this," it growled, the threat lurking in its voice even as it retreated. The shadows surged, their whispers drowning out the roar, becoming a cacophony that clawed at my mind. But I stood firm, determined, focusing on the light and pushing back. The flowers pulsed along with my heartbeat, their glow vibrating with life, and I felt a flicker of hope blossom within me. I wouldn't give in to fear. "Be gone," I shouted, the words bursting from me with unexpected power. "This is my fight." And as I did, a wave of energy shot from the stone, the brightness radiating like sunlight piercing through the darkest night. Shadows shrieked and writhed, retreating further away until they vanished behind the edges of the glade. But I knew deep down that this battle was just beginning. Even as I basked in the radiant light, I felt the darkness lurking, waiting for its chance to strike again. I had to keep moving, had to find a way to break the cycle. The whispers faded into a soft, eerie silence, but I couldn't allow myself to relax. Holding the stone, I steeled myself to venture deeper into the forest, knowing that each step forward would bring me closer to the truth. What truly lay at the heart of this darkness? Only by pressing on could I hope to uncover the answers and face whatever nightmare awaited me next. I took a deep breath, fueled by a fierce determination, and stepped into the shadows once again, ready for the unknown. I took one last look back at the fading glade, the glow from my stone flickering like a heartbeat in the shadows behind me. With a deep breath, I steadied my resolve, pushing forward into the chilling embrace of the trees. The moment I stepped back under the dark canopy, I could feel the air shift, as if the very forest was holding its breath, watching me. My heart raced again, the echo of unseen eyes tracking my every move. The path ahead quickly grew narrow, twisted roots reaching out like grasping hands. A cold breeze sent a shiver up my spine, carrying with it a low whisper that curled around my ears, words I couldn't quite catch. I strained to listen, but the forest roared back, drowning out the fleeting sound with its creepy symphony. Then I saw them, faint glowing eyes, scattered throughout the underbrush, peering at me from the darkness. They blinked one by one like fireflies in a dying garden, but these were not friendly creatures. These were predatory, hungry, lurking just beyond my reach. "Show yourself," I called out, my voice stronger than I felt. But the eyes only watched, waiting, their silence thick with anticipation. I pressed on, unable to shake the feeling that something was following me, creeping closer with each passing moment. Suddenly, a sharp rustle broke the silence, and I spun around just in time to see a shadow dart behind a tree, too quick to grab a clear glimpse. The forest was alive with movement, branches swaying, leaves rustling, but it was no longer just the trees. I could hear footsteps, soft, deliberate, stalking me through the underbrush. my stomach twisted in knotted fear. The whispers returned, louder now, forming an eerie chant that wrapped around me like fog. "Join us, be one of us." "No," I yelled, but it only deepened the chant, growing in urgency and desperation. I focused hard on the light from my stone, willing it to push back the encroaching darkness, but it flickered and dimmed, as if it was straining against something powerful. I pressed on, fighting against the fear, my mind racing as I tried to rationalize what I was feeling. But even my own thoughts felt foreign, echoes of doubt and dread gnawing at my resolve. Then I spotted something unusual, a small clearing bathed in an ethereal glow, unlike anything I had seen before. It was surrounded by ancient trees, their gnarled branches twisted in unnatural shapes, forming a grotesque circle of wood and shadow. At the center lay a small pool, shimmering like glass, reflecting not just the light, but something else. Images of faces twisted in anguish, their mouths opening in silent screams. My breath hitched at the sight, sorrow and terror swirling within me. As I stepped closer, the air thickened, choking me with a sense of impending doom. I knelt down, peering into the water, and the faces shifted, morphing into forms I recognized, old friends, family members, all twisted by despair, their eyes pleading for help. "Help us," they whispered, voices entwining in a haunting refrain. "Save us." I recoiled, shaking my head as if I could dispel the visions, but they lingered, drawing me in. A single tear trickled down my cheek, filled with a mix of horror and helplessness. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, unable to break their gaze. Without warning, the water bubbled violently and the surface erupted. Dark tendrils snaked out, curling toward me with an almost sentient purpose. "Join us," came the echoing cry, now tinged with malice. I scrambled back, my heart pounding in my chest, but the grip of the dark tendrils tightened around my ankles. "No, let me go." I kicked and twisted, fighting against their cold grasp, panic flooding my veins. In the chaos, the stone flared to life again, and the bright energy surged forth, cutting through the darkness. The tendrils recoiled at the brightness, and I gripped the stone tighter, feeling its warmth seep into my bones. With one powerful burst, I directed the light at the pool. The water shivered violently, the visions shattering into thousands of pieces like glass. The anguished faces faded into nothing, and I howled as the darkness around me screeched in rage, pulling away from the light. "Enough!" I shouted, the power coursing through me strengthening my voice. The shadows retreated, but I could feel their hostility. They wouldn't give up so easily. Without a moment to spare, I scrambled to my feet and bolted away from the clearing. I could sense the darkness gathering, regrouping, plotting their next move. The whispers turned into a cacophony of rage. "You'll pay for this, you belong to us." My pulse raced as I ran, the shadows snapping and clawing at me. Every footfall echoed in my ears, the ground seeming to shift beneath me as if trying to swallow me whole. I zigzagged through the trees, spotting glimpses of movement, eyes always watching, always following, the feeling of being hunted sending chills down my spine. The trees grew denser, branches clawing at my skin as I pushed through. I could barely breathe with the overwhelming fear closing in around me. A low, cruel laughter filled the air. "You cannot escape," it taunted. "You are lost in our domain." Just when I felt like giving in to despair, I stumbled into another clearing, a vast expanse filled with fog. The air was electric, crackling with danger. I turned slowly, scanning the edges for any sign of movement. My pulse quickened as I recognized the source of the laughter. A figure emerged from the mist, tall and shadowy, its features shrouded in darkness. It moved with a fluid grace, like smoke dancing in the wind. My breath caught as it stepped forward, revealing a face that was familiar yet twisted, someone I thought I'd lost. It wore a smile that sent shivers down my spine, eyes glinting with a mixture of malice and something darker. "Can you not see? You're just like us now," it said, voice thick with seduction. "Isn't it beautiful here? Get away from me," I shouted, stepping back as the haze of fear threatened to swallow me whole. But the figure only laughed again, a chilling sound that echoed through the clearing. "You can't fight what you are, what you've become. Join us and be free." The shadows behind it roiled, hungry and waiting. I clenched the stone tightly, its power the only shield against the encroaching darkness. "No, I will not." With a surge of determination, I lifted the stone high, pouring all my fear and anger into the light. Brilliant energy flowed forth, illuminating the clearing in a radiant burst. The shadows shrieked and howled, recoiling as the ghostly figure too melted into the bright glare. "Run!" I screamed at myself again, turning to flee. The light pulsed around me, creating a path as I dashed through the fog, desperate to escape the clutches of the darkness. But even as I ran, I could feel it clawing at my back, relentless in its pursuit. I burst through the edge of the clearing, racing toward what I hoped lay ahead, possibly a way out or worse, a deeper abyss. The woods shifted one last time, and as I ran, I felt the temperature drop, air thickening with a chilling dread. Just ahead, a massive ancient tree loomed. Its bark was twisted, gnarled, and covered in strange symbols that pulsed intermittently with a soft glow. Something told me this tree was the answer, the heart of the forest I had been searching for. But as I drew near, a sickening realization struck me. The shadows were gathering again, creeping closer, hungry for the flicker of light that I bore. "Stand your ground," I thought, willing myself to stay strong. Placing my hands against the tree's rough bark, I felt a surge of energy bound through me. This was something ancient, a source of power that connected to everything around me. The symbols lit up under my touch, and I could feel the forest awakening, responding to my presence, my determination. As the shadows closed in, I closed my eyes, channeling everything I had into that raw energy, into the heart of the forest. And that's when I heard it, a low, pulsating hum that echoed like a heartbeat, resonating deep within the earth, reverberating through my soul. The shadows shrieked as light erupted from the tree, enveloping me in its warmth. I felt the darkness recoil, the whispers fading into frantic cries of despair. "Leave. You do not belong here," I commanded, voice ringing out with newfound strength. As the light spread, the shadows shrank back, the flickering forms unable to withstand the radiant force. With every ounce of fear and pain I channeled, I pushed back against the darkness, feeling the ancient power of the forest surge within me. I could feel it, the connection, the bond. This was my fight, and I would not lose. And as I stood at the heart of it all, I knew that though the battle raged on, I had finally discovered the truth. I was never truly alone. The forest was with me, and this time I would not fade into the darkness. The warm glow from the tree wrapped around me like a protective blanket, the air humming with energy, fueling me with strength. My heart pounded, but now it was a rhythm of hope, resonating through the dark shadows that lurked just beyond the light. I felt a bond with the forest, a deep connection that brought clarity to the chaos swirling around me. But the shadows were not finished yet. They surged forward, darker and more twisted, stretching out like tendrils of smoke seeking to find a way back into my soul. "You think you've won?" A voice hissed from the depths, slithering over me like a snake. "What do you know of victory?" I shot back, surprised by my own defiance. I pressed my hands harder against the rough bark of the tree, feeling the pulsing energy radiate through me like electricity. The warmth grew, and I could see the shadows beginning to shrink, their forms flickering uncertainly. "Enough!" I shouted once more, raising the stone high above my head. The light exploded, brighter this time, flooding every corner of the clearing. The shadows recoiled, hissing like angry spirits frightened by the sun. Their whispers turned into frantic screeches, the noise piercing through the once still air, creating a chaotic symphony of dread. Desperate to break their hold, I concentrated on the light, commanding it to grow. "I won't let you take me," I declared, feeling my own resolve shake the very ground beneath my feet. The tree shivered, its ancient roots responding to my call for strength. Then for the first time I heard something else, a faint chanting echoing from the depths of the forest, a sound that felt like hope and despair woven together. It began softly, then swelled, a chorus rising to meet the shadows, pushing them back further. I closed my eyes and let the energy surround me, letting it fill my lungs and spill into my voice. Together we chanted, a mixture of light and darkness, power resonating through the air, rippling against the shadows. But then terror cut through me like a knife. Emerging from the dark mass was the hulking figure I had seen earlier, its form unmoving, but now with a tangible rage in its glowing eyes. It moved with purpose, stepping closer to me, its laughter echoing like thunder in the night. "You cannot escape what you are," it roared, the darkness swirling like a storm around it, wrapping in layers as if trying to smother the light. I stumbled back, nearly losing my balance, but with that slip, I also found clarity. Encased in fear, I realized that running wasn't the answer. The shadows had always been there, coiling around my soul, feeding off my doubt and pain. Instead of running, I needed to stand my ground, to take back what was mine. I focused on the tree, feeling the energy thrumming like a heartbeat. "I will not let you win," I declared, determination surging in my chest. "I will take back my life." The light pooled around me, intensifying once more. The hulking figure lunged, but I pushed forward into the overwhelming darkness, letting the light explode from the stone. Bright energy surged, illuminating every corner of the clearing. The darkness screamed, a collective wail that curled around me like a tightening noose. Branches creaked and groaned, the wind howled as the forest seemed to respond to the battle. Shadows were pushed back, twisting and howling as if being exposed to daylight for the first time. The ancient tree began to glow brighter, the symbols etched into its bark shimmering with an otherworldly intensity. "This ends now," I shouted, fueled by desperation as I held the stone firmly. The figures writhed in agony, their forms melting into the ground, their shrieks rising to a deafening crescendo. I could feel the power growing, a pulse that thrummed beneath my skin, aligning with the heartbeat of the forest. It felt like a tidal wave crashing through the darkness and washing it away. The shadowy tendrils retreated, their form bubbling like oil on water, grotesque figures losing their shape and coherence under the radiant light. No more whispers haunted me now, the air was filled with the sounds of breaking chains. But as the final shadows dissolved, a cold chill swept through the clearing. Silence fell like a blanket smothering all the noise. I looked around, heart racing, and realized that something was off. The light flickered, the warmth I had felt before ebbing away. My surroundings dulled, the colors muddying, transforming into ghastly shades of gray. From this eerie stillness, a new darkness began creeping in, thicker than before. It snaked around the edges of the clearing, and I could feel its hunger, an insidious dread clawing at my chest. Then came the laughter again, rising from the depths of the shadows, crawling into my ears like a disease. "You've only delayed the inevitable." Just at that moment, I noticed something glimmering on the forest floor, partially buried beneath the dirt and leaves. Drawn by that twinkling light, I knelt down, clawing at the soil desperately. My hands hit something cool and smooth, a shard of crystal pulsating with a faint glow. The instant I touched it, a surge of energy shot through me, powerful and raw. Visions flooded my mind, images of others like me trapped in a cycle of despair, seeking a way out. Understood then that this was not just about my own fight, it was a battle for many lost souls. With the crystal in my grasp, I could feel a connection to the forest deepening. I turned instinctively back to the tree, its strength mingling with the energy of the crystal, igniting a wildfire of hope within me. "Together," I shouted, lifting the crystal high, summoning the light once more. It was no longer just my fight, it was a resurgence, a wave of hope that could consume the darkness. As the light blazed forth, the shadows recoiled in the face of this new power. I could feel the evil wailing behind me, trying to absorb the vibrance of spirit and strength I was summoning. "You are nothing," I declared, allowing the light to surge, bathing everything around me in brilliance. The shadows whirled, desperate now, trying to reclaim their hold as the world around me shimmered and shifted. I could hear the cries from the past, the lost souls echoing, and they were not afraid anymore. Together we would break the curse of the darkness. With a final surge, I thrust both my hands forward, combining the energies of the crystal and the tree. "You will release them," I screamed, and the light burst like a supernova, blinding and consuming everything in its path. Time seemed to distort around me, reality warping as the shadows tried to spiral back, to clutch at my ankles, yet I felt an overwhelming force that pushed them back, screaming their final cries of anguish. The wave crashed over the forest, sweeping away the darkness, flooding every corner with a radiant light that humiliated the shadows. As I stood there, I realized I was not merely an observer of the fight, I was the one leading it, the one who finally took control. But as the luminous pulse settled, peace washed over me, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I could breathe freely. In the shimmering light, I saw it, the shapes of the lost souls rising to the surface, their expressions shifting from anguish to relief. They swirled around me, forming a dance of light, and from deep within the shadows, the familiar figure appeared again, the laughter gone, replaced with fury. Its form was less solid now, flickering like a candle in the wind. "This is not over," it hissed, its voice a chilling whisper weaving through the air. "You may have bought time, but the darkness will always come back." I stood tall as the glow encircled me. "Then I'll be ready." And I knew this fight wasn't just a battle. It was a journey, one I would continue to face, armed with hope and the strength of those who had come before me. The shadows may return, but now I felt the power of the forest pulsing within me, the weight of its ancient wisdom breaking away the chains of despair. There was so much left to uncover, and deep down, I understood that together we could face whatever lay ahead. And I knew this fight wasn't just a battle. It was a journey, one I would continue to face, armed with hope and the strength of those who had come before me. But as the flickering forms of the lost souls began to fade into bright rays of light, something strange happened. The forest shifted around me once again, and the atmosphere thickened with an unsettling chill. The laughter of the shadowy figure echoed once more, but now it was higher, almost mocking. "You think you've won?" it whispered, its voice curling around me like icy fingers. "You think you can banish me for good? The darkness is patient. It lies in wait." I felt the energy of the light around me dimming, the vibrant colors of the forest dulling into muted grays, as if the very essence of hope was being swallowed back into the ground. The warmth that had once enveloped me started to slip away like sand through my fingers, leaving only a bone-chilling cold. In that moment, I realized I wasn't done yet. The specter was right. I had merely scratched the surface of the darkness that haunted this place. Feeling an icy dread grip my heart, I began to search around the desolate clearing. The once vibrant colors of nature had turned into a monstrous display of despair. The trees now twisted in gnarled creatures that whispered my name, their hollow trunks echoing with sorrowful pleas. A low mist rose from the ground, curling around my legs like a serpent, seeping into my thoughts, clouding my mind with doubts. I could hear the echoes of my own past failures creeping back, taunting me with memories that made my skin crawl. Desperate and frightened, I pressed the crystal to my chest, trying to draw strength from it. But it felt different now, almost cold in my grip. "Get away from me!" I yelled into the mist, but it only thickened, wrapping around me tighter, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I could barely see, the fog swirling around like a living thing, pulling me deeper into darkness. I stumbled backward, but my foot caught on something hard and I fell, landing roughly on the damp earth. As I looked up, the shadows began to twist and dance, morphing into forms I recognized. Faces contorted with anguish, eyes pleading for help, faces of those I thought I had lost. They loomed closer, their mouths opening in silent screams that sent shivers coursing through my body. "You will join us," they whispered in unison, their voice a chilling melody. The specter returned, looming over them, grinning wickedly. "See what you have to look forward to? You cannot escape the fate you deserve." Fear tightened its grip on my chest, but deep within, a flicker of defiance sparked. I screamed, "No, I will not become like them." With every ounce of will I could muster, I pushed the light from the crystal outward, forcing the shadows back, but it wasn't enough. The faces screamed, echoing in my mind, their suffering filling the silence with dread. Then I felt it, the pull of the darkness trying to drag me in, trying to break me. I could sense my own fears rising to the surface, the insecurities that had haunted me throughout my life, but I refused to surrender. I would not let the darkness consume me. Summoning all my strength, I raised my voice, trying to pierce through the suffocating fog. "I am more than my fears. I choose to fight." As those words escaped my lips, something shifted in the energy around me. The light from the crystal began to reclaim its brilliance, flowing anew with the strength of my resolve, echoing through the clearing like a thunderclap. The shadows shrieked as the blinding light expanded, illuminating the entire forest in a radiant glow. Pulsing with energy, I felt the warmth rush back, flooding the air, drawing out the remnants of darkness that clung to the edges. The lost souls shimmered, their faces shifting from sorrow to relief. They surrounded me, transforming my fear into power, becoming a shield against the encroaching shadows. With the clarity of purpose flooding my senses, I stepped forward. "You will not take me." The shadows writhed in pain, screaming as I let the light flood my mind, purging the doubts and fears I had carried for too long. I was no longer fighting just for myself. I was fighting for every soul that had suffered within these woods. The specter roared in fury, but it was powerless against the collective light I summoned, a force larger than any single darkness. The shadows broke apart, collapsing inwards like a deflating balloon, their terrible screams fading into the crisp night air. The forest breathed deeply, the oppressive weight lifting as light flooded every corner of the clearing. The curse was broken, yet I could still feel a lingering presence, something buried deep within the roots of the ancient trees, a whisper promising that the darkness would always exist, lurking just out of sight, waiting for another moment of weakness to strike. "Though you may return, I will be ready," I vowed, my heart steady as I planted my feet firmly on the ground. The forest, now a chorus of life, thrummed around me. I turned to the glowing tree, knowing I had forged a bond with this ancient power. The energy would always be my ally, and I would become the guardian of the light, the protector against darkness. As I stepped back into the path that led me away from the clearing, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The whispers, once menacing, became gentle reminders of the strength that lay within me. I carried with me the weight of the journey but also the promise of hope. The forest gave me a final pulse of energy, a promise that it would always be beside me, a part of the fight against the shadows that would never truly disappear. I left the clearing behind, not just as a survivor but as a warrior ready to face whatever came next. And while I knew the darkness was patient, I was no longer afraid. I had embraced my own power, and with that, I would always keep the shadows at bay. Will the darkness come for me again? Will I be strong enough to stand against it? The questions lingered in my mind, unable to shake the unease born from the shadow's final whisper. But despite the fear, I felt a strength I had never known. No matter how many times it tries, I thought with determination, I will stand up to it.